Hello, everybody, and welcome to ABM Answered, the quickfire demand generation ABM video series. I'm here with Rachel, who is totally capable of introducing herself in a second. But to give a short overview of the concept of the series, Rachel, in this case, will be given 7 questions to respond to, all about account-based marketing and demand generation. And in this case, we're specifically going to be focusing in on challenges around virtual and hybrid events because Rachel is an expert. These questions have come from or have been adapted based on the data that we've collected at Mixed Reality Rooms, where over 1,000 marketers have gone through and stated what their biggest challenges are or struggles are with demand generation and ABM at the moment. So yes, Rachel, I will hand it over to you to give an intro.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a joy. Hi everyone. I'm Rachel from Virtual Approval. I'm the Managing Director. We're a creative agency specialising in events. So we started in 2020 when virtual events were very much the thing and have evolved since then, primarily offering hybrid events and wraparound services. Such as conferences, award shows, product launches, exhibitions, you name it. So yeah, a real passion for helping people make the most of technology that's available to them to bring people together.
Fantastic. Right. So I'm going to jump straight into the challenges now. I'll read out the problem first and then kind of spring a question off the back of it. The first problem that came in was low engagement rates. So my question to you, Rachel, would be, how do you ensure kind of high engagement rates during your virtual and hybrid events or sessions? And specifically, I guess, how do you encourage meaningful interaction? So perhaps not just the thumbs up if you're here session or where you're from, but how do you get kind of data and insights to understand and improve lead quality?
Yeah, okay, great question. And this is something that comes up first and foremost with all the events that we manage and produce. And it is all about engagement. Everybody wants to go to an event that they can take part in, not just be told things. They want to be able to contribute to that, whether they're online or in person. So my top tip would be to utilize a host. So too many times I see people put on a virtual event or an in-person event and have somebody who's part of the event team or the company director, if it's an internal conference, that's the CEO who will be the host, but they're not necessarily used to doing that. A professional host or somebody whose only thing to think about on the event is the engagement will have that in their mind the whole time. So, we can plan in use of software, things like Miro boards, mural boards are fantastic. These are like the virtual whiteboards where the delegates can contribute and they can have their say. So feels a lot more fun that way. It's a bit more touch and feel kind of exercises, and those are really good for getting the attendees to say what's really on their mind, because it's much more free flowing and less like an exam or something daunting like a live Q&A. So you get really good responses in there. Running polls, using surveys are all really good as well, and bringing that into the conversation. But having a host will make sure that those things are all used properly. So if you run a poll, then you really need to have the host talk around the data, the inputs, bring people into the conversation, and those people who might be further afield, who might not be on the front row or even in the room, actually include them in the conversations as well. And don't just do a poll for polling's sake or a word cloud for word cloud's sake. Actually talk about what the input is there, and having a host who's dedicated to that role will make that person better at their job and everybody else better at their job, because it's a really complex thing to master, especially in a hybrid scenario where you have got some audience who aren't necessarily front and center. So separating out that role is really important. And even though there might be somebody who could do it, if they're not doing it all the time, or they haven't been practicing it, they haven't gone through these little steps in the rehearsal, then the whole engagement piece can really suffer. So that would be my top tip: have a dedicated host.
That makes total sense. I've never thought about it, but there are some webinars that I've joined in particular where I join, and at first I'm like, wait, what is this? And there's like a hype man, but it ultimately the host controlling kind of the segment through the day. And it does make you stop and kind of think like, okay, and provide, it gives it an edge, I guess, as opposed to the traditional webinars. My question off the back of it is, we could go into what makes a good host, but where do you find a host? I imagine they've got to be neutral. Are there websites, or is it just a case of, do you help people find hosts?
Yeah, it depends what level of investment you've got for this. I appreciate that some internal events or webinars might not have the budget to have, a celebrity host or a professional host whereby that's their entire career. Obviously, we do recommend that for the larger scale events, and if you can afford it, then we have some fantastic hosts that we work with on a regular basis. But it doesn't necessarily need to be that level of investment. If you are doing a webinar internally, then the keynote speakers should be focusing on their presentation and what their expertise are. And then the host could just be somebody who's confident and good at facilitating conversations. And that might be somebody from the marketing team or the sales team, but their only purpose is to think about facilitating conversations. So they don't have to think about, are my slides going to come up in the right order? Will I remember to reference that piece of data in my presentations? There's so much on everybody else that's involved in the event that it just needs to be a confident individual who's good at communicating, that is there just with the purpose of facilitating the conversation and the engagement. So there are some people who are naturally really good at that. So just invite them into the event and then pick out those points where you want the engagement to happen. So say, right, we're going to have an icebreaker, we're going to use a word cloud, and then we're going to reference 3 people's inputs into the word cloud and invite them to say a little bit more about what word they picked. And straight away, those people feel special. They've been invited onto the screen, they're engaged, they're listening for the rest of their presentation.
That's awesome. It makes total sense as well. Problem 2, personalization. So obviously there's the basics. My question would be, what are some of the craziest forms of personalization you've seen within virtual and hybrid events? Not necessarily, doesn't have to be your own events that you've run. And to get a bit more serious, I guess, how do you personalize events for key accounts if you're putting on these external sales and marketing events?
Sure, yeah, it has got to be really purpose driven. I think that's the key there, because there's a lot of gimmicks that happen around personalization as well, and that's all well and good, but it's got to be tied into the purpose of the event, isn't it? So goodie bags are an obvious one where you can either do that digitally through vouchers and like exhibition booths that people can upload photos to, or there's some really cool AI software that's available as well where you can have photo booths that make you look like an alien or a celebrity, or you're with the featured celebrity from the event. There's a really cool company called Nuna, shout out to Nuna, that do like AI tattoos, and so you can literally type in what you want your tattoo to be, and then it prints out as a transfer, and you put that onto the delegates. That can happen virtually as well through like the overlays that happen in the camera feed. So you can have your own little decoration on your camera feed. Badges are an easy one for the in-person delegates. You can put like avatars and guess who things on each side of the badge so everybody can go around and play a little game of guess who. That's a really nice icebreaker that we've done before. A pledge tree we've done quite a few times, where there'll be a tree in a physical space and online, and everybody can write down what they're going to commit to, what they've learned from that presentation and what they're going to do before the next conference or the next webinar. They hang that on their tree, everyone can see it, and then it gives that like accountability when they come back around. So then you can see, oh, Sam's pledge from our last conference was, and then you can reveal whether you've had a successful 6 months, quarter, or whatever it was. So yeah, there is loads and loads of options for personalization, but we'd always start with what's the purpose of the event, what are the nature of the people that are there as well, because there's different levels of extroverted type attendees. As to what sort of personalization might suit them, and then tie it back to, right, what software have we already got, and what venue have we got, and then make the personalization appropriate for the event, really. But there's loads of different things, so I'd love to chat about specifics, and it's super important because that's what everybody remembers, isn't it? Those cute little takeaways that is just for them.
Absolutely. And problem 3 was measuring ROI. So ROI, I spoke to Sadir in our last episode. He says marketers now more than ever, and it's ironic because this should have always been the thing, but like return on investment. So is front and center. What metrics are important to your clients who run these sales and marketing events? Is it brand awareness? Is it like cold hard leads? Is it revenue further down the line? How do people measure success of these virtual and hybrid events?
Sure. So it is quite a wide topic, and I think for anybody that's considering starting doing events, you do need to be in it for the long haul. It's not a quick win type of strategy. You may, as with all marketing, you may get lucky and pick up a hot lead on your first webinar, but more than likely it's about brand awareness and raising your profile with that audience. So invite them along to a webinar and make sure it's educational, not just a sales pitch, so they can actually feel trust towards you, that they have gained some tips and some information that's going to be useful to them, that's going to raise your credibility and make them want to come back and watch the webinar again, come to your podcast, go and have a look at your website and the back catalogue of the material that you've got out there. And the byproduct of doing these things, doing a webinar or a virtual event or a hybrid event, is you've got all that content. So if you already have like social media and YouTube and website content as part of your strategy, then you may as well do a webinar to get that content. And you've got then a live audience as well who will be able to have a two-way conversation with you. Plus you've filmed everything that's happened in your virtual event at your webinar. You can then put that out on socials, on YouTube, and it all feeds into the same funnel, and people have got more touch points. And if they've got some useful information from you for the webinar, then brilliant. And it has been quite a long process with some clients. Like we started working with one company in 2020 when they were doing webinars, just really not knowing if there would be any take up from it. And the first sort of 4 or 5, there was only really their current audience that came along to it. So it's like 50 people, say. But as the word got out and things started growing, then they started reaching much further afield. And now they're still doing the monthly webinars. They have on average of 300 attendees, and those attendees are from all over the world. So before they were very local in their client base, but they've got a product that's available all over the world. So now they get people from 60 different countries watching live, plus loads more going to the YouTube channel afterwards. So it's now their main source of lead generation of those webinars. So
Nice.
yeah,
How do you, as a hiring manager, not a hiring manager, as the marketer responsible for, say, I want to put on webinars and our company aren't doing webinars at the moment. You mentioned it's a long game there, and I think that's the same across all account-based marketing. Like I read
yeah.
Sadir's book earlier, and it's like account-based marketing is a long game. It's all about building that relationship and nurturing it. Have you got any tips on how a marketing manager, for example, can kind of convince them that webinars or virtual hybrid events are the right way to go?
Well, it's looking at those case studies, but also thinking about it beyond that moment in time, as I was
Yeah.
saying, the byproducts that you will get, which is all of the data of the people that come along. If you use things well, like a survey and the Q&A that you gather
Mm-hmm.
during the webinar, then you can have an important reason to follow up with those individuals, and you know what they're interested in by the questions that they've asked, how people have answered the polls. So you've got the data there, and you've got all the content, everything that happened on the event. You can chop that up and use that in different places. So I would say to that marketing manager to come up with a business plan based on not just the webinar, but the repurposing of the data and the content as well. So
Yeah.
it's a whole piece. And then the return investment is massive once you break it down like that and look at how it can impact all the other activities that the company is doing, but probably scratching their head. Everybody gets to a point of, oh, we don't have any content for the website, we don't have blogs, we don't have anything to put out on LinkedIn this month. If they've done a webinar, then ta-da, is there.
Interesting. So it's like the webinar budget, I guess, could come out of the content creation budget or the events
Yeah,
budget
exactly.
in interesting.
Yeah,
Um, I never thought about that, because if you post it across social, then you've got something to anchor off, right? So you've got like, okay, this gets this many impressions when you post it on social. We're creating that, and then that can give you kind of more hard fixed numbers to prove ROI out.
yeah.
Makes
You
total
know
sense.
what topics are being watched more, and it's a great way to drive traffic to the actual webinar. You see them all the time, don't you? Trailers
Mhm.
for webinars, for podcasts, and then it cuts off just before the question gets answered. But it works.
We need a company to like create Netflix style trailers for webinars. I'm not sure. It probably exists somewhere.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
my next question, and this is a personal question, so I thought I'd throw it in there because I'm curious about it. Technical issues. So, we've got better since 2020, and I think like when we started in 2020, there was a lot of people had to kind of like take a risk in a way. Like there was no other option. They had to kind of jump in 2 feet first and act really, really quickly.
Yeah,
And we had some technical issues in the beginning. We know our competitors had some technical issues. Like it just happened across the board. And I think we've got a lot better at dealing with it. But how do you kind of de-risk for technical issues happening? And specifically with hybrid events, uh, you're working with both software and hardware.
mm-hmm.
So are the risks increased, and what are kind of your steps to mitigating that risk for them?
Sure. So it's not rocket science. It is just down to like preparation, really. And now though we have all become more comfortable with the software and the hardware over the last few years, that's definitely helped, and presenters are more comfortable with the video conferencing tools, and they understand the need to be in a fixed place when you're going to be doing a
Mhm.
remote presentation, for example. Touch wood, we haven't had people wandering around like in the garden using a mobile phone for a long time like we did in the pandemic. So that's helpful, but it does just come down to rehearsals, testing, preparation. So that can't be skipped. It is important to think about what the risks are and come up with backup plans, and then run rehearsals. And if there is going to be a larger risk than is comfortable, then pre-recording, is an option as well. Pre-recording some sessions where we know that there is going to be an internet situation, and there's ways and means to make that look more live, simulive, as is the buzzword at the moment. So yeah, pre-recording some of the content, having a live Q&A session could be a good compromise. And when it comes to hybrid, there is more factors to take into consideration. So picking the right venue and picking the right platform, the right software, really important. And doing that before you get into all of the other nuts and bolts of the event. If you pick a venue that has an impossible internet facility, or they want to charge an astronomical amount for an add-on for an internet, for fixed line internet, then it's really going to struggle to run a hybrid event within your budget.
I've heard about those. Apparently, that they hold companies to ransom, basically.
They do, especially in the States. Sorry to anybody in America, but there is some horror stories of client signs with a particular venue, doesn't include the internet, so the contract is already done. The client's got no negotiation power anymore,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden we've had £10,000, £20,000 add-on just for an internet facility for a 2 or 3 day conference, which is a huge extra to magically appear in anyone's budget. But if you are planning on doing a hybrid event, then it's a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that conversation from the off is really important. Testing the internet capability. Wi-Fi is not usually sufficient. It needs to be hardwired. If you're just using Wi-Fi, you're also going to do interactivity. When all the delegates try and log on at the same time, that's going to crash the live stream if everything's running on Wi-Fi. So bringing in a technical partner from the start to speak to the venue before you sign the contract is really important, because they can advise you about those pitfalls, and picking the right software to keep everything compatible and consistent is important as well. So yeah, that's a really long-winded way of saying prepare, test, prepare, rehearse.
I think my main takeaway from that is we're in the wrong business. I wish I was selling hardwired Wi-Fi, but
Yeah, it's not even fast with some of the connections. That particular one where we were quoted an extra £10,000 to have an internet capability, it was a 5 megabyte, 5 meg per second internet capability. So yeah,
that's
it was
shocking.
it was in a remote location. Somewhere like Central America, quite remote location, so it was just going to be a Wi-Fi box with several SIM cards in, but still.
That is, you can't really do much with 5 megabytes, and I'm not even techie, and I know that.
Exactly.
Problem 5: integrating events into the buyer's journey. So
Mm-hmm.
it's basically, I think I know who set this in, and it's basically it comes down to confusion of like when and how is the best time to incorporate events or
Mm-hmm.
to deliver some content to these people. So I guess another question is, or along those lines, what are you currently seeing? Are more people running webinars to generate new leads in this current climate, or is it more of a case of nurturing existing ones that are already in the pipeline? So I know a lot of deals are getting kind of, is it like halted or stopped because of budgets or whatnot, and they need far more justification and engage more stakeholders. But what
Yeah.
are you generally seeing with your clients? Is it more new business or nurturing?
I think everybody goes into it with the intention of new business,
Mm-hmm.
because it is that's the kind of impetus that will lead to we're going to start doing a webinar series, but inevitably you'll pick up people who are at different stages of the journey, and it's just a really effective way to stay top of mind with an audience, regardless of where they are. And they the majority of your audience won't be in a position to buy right now, and trying to get them at that time through an email campaign, or through social posts, or through like cold calling on the phone, it's really unlikely that you're going to get that. But they may well come along just to keep on top of trends, to like network, to see what's just out of interest, to kind of keep their
Mhm.
finger on the pulse with what's going on. If you're like the thought leader on a topic, and you're doing these webinars that are interesting for people on a regular basis, then when they are at that stage of their buying journey where they want to make a purchase, then they're more likely to come back to you. So the doing them on a regular basis is important. And so I think like virtual events are still low cost, so you can do those like on a monthly basis, is what we typically see as a cycle. Do like a monthly webinar that's really affordable, that you can invite your audience to come along to, like for networking as well as the content, because they'll want to stay connected to everybody that they meet on the webinar.
Mhm.
And then having a larger like hybrid event or an in-person event, maybe once every 6 months, to like tie that all together, so you've got a bit of a blend. Because the virtual ones are like easy to churn out, but not as effective as the larger like full day events. So having a blend is good, and they are effective for new business, but you'll get better quality new business if people have been in the cycle for a longer time.
I see. Okay. And with the planning, you mentioned like a monthly cadence for these webinars. Do you typically suggest that a marketer will, or an event planner will, have those topics locked in right for the year, like ahead of time? Or is it a case of like they'll lock the 3 topics in for the quarter, and then they'll lock the next 3 topics in for the quarter? How does that work?
Mm. We would suggest having the topics vaguely laid out. It's like doing a content plan for socials, and that you can
Yeah.
have like the umbrella topics laid out, but then it will there'll be some nuances within there depending on who the speaker is, or if there's something that has happened in the industry that you really need to talk about to stay relevant at that time.
Mhm.
So have some flex within it, but certainly if you're booking external speakers for your webinar, then you're going to need to reach out to them like 6 months in advance, really, to get it locked into their diary, and for your own planning, so you're not constantly on the back foot. So I'd say like 6 to 12 months ahead would be advisable, and then you can always tweak it once you get closer to the date with the actual topic.
That just shows how much of a rookie I am when it comes to that. I didn't even think or factor that into the equation. I was just thinking, oh, trends change all the time, so you got to
Yeah,
stay relevant. But yeah, like if you're going to have a big speaker session, and I imagine that's why they don't happen so much on webinars and more, they're just booked in for these flagship events. You do
yeah,
have to pre-plan.
yeah.
So that's pre-plan. Problem 6 is post-event follow-up. So what strategies are working well for your clients, for kind of, or I guess it's more of the sales team, right? They get delivered leads. Is there anything crazy and unique you're seeing, or like rather than, hey, thanks for joining our webinar, like, have you got any questions? Have you got any
Yeah.
creative stories there?
So yeah, I mean the questions are always good. That gives a reason to follow up. Giving another incentive for them to take an action. So if you want the delegates to like book a discovery call, or you want them to fill out your form or sign up to your mailing list, then getting them to do that there and then on the event is always good. If you need to give an incentive, like get entered into a prize draw, then you need to click this link to book a call before the end of the session today, then that's really effective. People do take action there and then. If it is
Okay.
that kind of if it's that kind of webinar where people know that they're there because it's a sales pitch.
Yeah.
Like there's different kinds of webinars, right? And sometimes people have signed up because they want the pitch.
Really? That's super interesting. So, and I've heard this advice before. It's like if you're going to teach something, just teach them. No call to action
Mm,
to like sell them afterwards, nothing. But then if you're going to sell them, just go straight in and sell them. And just no one likes the snakiness, do they? So do those kind of webinars work where it's like, hey, this is like a pitch of why we're great, and you're going to sign up and book in?
Yeah, if people have been, if you've been transparent about the purpose of the webinar when people have been signing up, then yeah, and I think a lot of them are like those taster sessions. So, you know, say if it's a trainer and they're doing a webinar because they want someone to sign up for their course, then they'll do like a taster session where everybody can come on and they can actually learn a tool that's going to benefit them day to day. But they also know that they're in the market for this training course, so they might want to buy it. And then if the trainer's like, you know, if you've enjoyed what you've seen here and you're interested in my course, then fill out this form and that'll mean you book a call and we'll follow up with you. So everybody's on in the know of what's happening next. You know, they're here to see if the course is for them and to see if the product's for them, and then they've got an opportunity to book a call there and then. So having like a direct call to action like that, I think is effective. And you can't expect everybody to fill it out. If you put a link into a chat and say fill out this form to join our mailing list or to book another call, 50% would be a good response rate to that.
Okay,
um,
that's high. I wasn't expecting that.
yeah, if
Nice.
everybody's stayed to the end of the webinar, I would want 50% to like be happy to be contacted to be added to a mailing list, for example. Um, for a sales type webinar, if it is more educational and it's more community based, then bringing in a community app is good. So we've been working with like Guild and Circle, these
Hmm.
like community based applications on some of our event series. So that's a good way to like keep your audience in a place. Like it's essentially like a LinkedIn group or a Facebook group,
Yeah.
but you can separate out topics of conversation. So you could have everybody join your circle community. So say there's
Hmm.
attendees from an event join a circle community, and then they can all stay in touch with each other and they can like give each other help and support and advice, and you as the event organizer can market to them about other offshoot conversations, webinars, products. So thinking about like community in between your events, if you are doing annual or biannual events, how are you going to keep everybody connected? Because networking is a
Yeah.
really important part of why people go to an event, right? And then apart from LinkedIn or social media, there isn't often a platform provided by the organizer for everybody to stay in touch. So thinking
Mm.
about that, if you are doing events that aren't very often, would be another tip.
Okay, yeah, and I also have heard from this was from a man called Vasilios who I interviewed that direct mail and all that gifting stuff really works well still, but it doesn't work as well as forming those kind of community bonds or connecting their
Mm,
peers with each other. That's becoming
yeah,
more and more of the value prop, so that makes total sense. We're on the last one anyway. So problem 7 is digital fatigue. So
yeah,
a lot of webinar registrations are tanking for well, a lot of the people that we speak to anyway, which is ends up why we having kind of these conversations. But obviously, some are really winning, and I guess my question is, how do your clients differentiate their virtual events, not necessarily hybrid events in this case, but like their virtual events to kind of entice people to turn up and kind of
yeah.
capture attention?
I think the ones that are consistently doing well are ones where they are maximizing the networking and the personalization. So if it's like an open forum kind of webinar, or there's going to be part of an open forum around the presentations, then actually inviting your audience to like have their say and get to know them a bit before is good. So we've got a client, for example, who sends out like a Google sheet before each webinar and asks all of the audience to fill in what they're hoping to get from it. So,
Mm-hmm.
there'll be some prompt questions on there about the particular topic, but then the audience can say, this is the reason why I'm coming along, what I'm really interested to hear about. And then the more they feel like they've had a voice before they've even got there. And from the organizer's perspective, they've got some questions already there. They can bring people into the conversation once they are in the live webinar and just make it a lot more on point. So not just thinking, we want to do a presentation about X topic because that's on our content plan. You can still do the presentation about X topic, but you've got Bob, Bill, and Sarah who've already said that they want to find out about why. So let's bring that in because that's what's important to them at the time. So just like molding it to your audience and making it more of an open forum, I think is the thing that the successful ones always do. And then the networking piece, so putting people into breakout rooms, allowing them to connect with one another, is super important, not just doing a broadcast. So use networking, use breakout rooms, use the Miro boards and mural boards, and remember that each person is an individual and they're not just there to be broadcast to, otherwise they would have watched your YouTube video. They want to speak to one another.
So what's the play there? It's a phenomenal answer, and it makes total sense as well. But what's the play? What's the hook? Is that sounds like it's more like an ask me anything kind of session? Is that kind of what you're alluding to, rather than a like we're going to talk about this topic? It's quite a nice, innovative way, I guess, to actually customize it, because the audience themselves are building the webinar that way, I guess. And
Yeah,
I
they are
guess like
building it.
yeah.
So you could have an ask me anything, but so when I say that they do prompt questions, they will invite the audience to say like a particular challenge that they've had. So say if they're doing a presentation about a new law. For example, we work with like some legal clients, then they could have lawyers come on and say like a particular case that's been puzzling them, so then they can bring this to the foreground and get the opinions of the other people who are on the call as well as the presenter, the expert. So they can still keep it on that topic because the questions were submitted on the topic that the presenter's an expert on.
Mm-hmm.
But the person's going to that webinar probably because they've got this difficult case, they've got this challenge that they're trying to work on at the moment. So they might not, they just might not turn up if they think that the topic is going to be, it might be relevant to them, but are they really going to get their specific problem solved on this webinar? Probably not, if they're looking at the diary and going, like my workload's crazy today. But if they've filled in a form in advance and they said, I really want to talk about this problem, then they're much more likely to attend in the first place if they think that they've had that, the presenter already knows about their problem and the webinar has been put on for them. And if you don't get a chance to answer that question on the call, then from the organizer's point of view, it's a perfect opportunity to follow up with them.
So this is also interesting, because from a human perspective, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently. If you have your problem, you can go to ChatGPT now and like type it in. It gives you a contextualized answer and feedback. This isn't really a question. This is just me blurring out a statement and wanting to get your thoughts on it. So how much of it is people joining the webinar to basically pose their question, where they could have got the answer on ChatGPT anyway, just to be kind of seen and heard by the speaker, to like boost and maybe this is more internal. So I'm thinking of a company that runs internal onboarding webinars to deliver their training. But the person I was speaking to about it was like, he's convinced that people just turn up because they want to get credits by talking to the person that's the host or the expert and like get on their roadmap. Do you think that happens, or
Yeah, definitely. There's an element of that. They want to raise their profile and like get known by the speaker or the brand that's putting on the
yeah,
webinar. But also AI can only take you so far with a complex challenge, and you probably want to feel that you're not alone and the other people have been through the same thing as you, or they've already cracked the code. You know, like why people listening to this right now, like they could have just typed in how to get more attendees
totally true.
into ChatGPT, can
Yeah.
they? So we still want that human connection. We still want to feel like we're not alone in whatever it is that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so the webinars are like mentoring, I guess. Like you're leaning into the experience
Yeah.
of the individual rather than the skills.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Community, you want to feel together and yeah. I mean, why don't we just all read books to learn stuff? Just don't do it. If you're anything like me, anyway, I've got a pile of books. But if I have a problem, I want to learn something, I will call up my mentor or my friend
Yeah,
or go to a webinar.
it's not just books; it's courses. The amount of courses out there, and like
Yeah,
I've bought courses, and I'm at the stage where I seem to be collecting courses to build like a course bookshelf or something that I'll probably never get round to doing.
exactly.
It's like a business in itself. But yes, thank you so much for your wisdom and your knowledge and your expertise. My final question, Rachel, is: do you have a question? And if not, and you can think about it later. Do you have a question that you'd like me to ask our next guest?
Oh, about what?
Well, anything, I guess, but probably along the lines of either events or account-based marketing or demand generation. Is there anything that you would like to know?
Well, not knowing who they are, I mean, what's their what's their favourite event that they've ever been to?
What's their favorite event they've ever been to and why? I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. It's a solid question. Creative answers potentially as well. So yeah, no.
exactly.
I'll,
You might get some interest in, oh, I went to Bob Marley Festival or something random like that.
you never know. It's the niche ones that are always the best as well. Or I really like the stories of how people have like hijacked events.
Yes,
They're the best. But
exactly. So have
Rachel,
fun with that.
thank you very much. For anyone that's listening, where can they find you or reach out to you?
Just on LinkedIn. Look me up, Rachel Locke, Rachel Approval.
Okay, I will tag you in the post and make that easy to do. So yeah, thank you very much for your time again, Rachel, and I'll speak to you soon.